There are several types of missing persons. I've talked about several kinds of them in my 6 years of writing articles and now doing a podcast. This is a type I haven't yet talked about. One of the definitions of missing is absent from a place, especially home, and of unknown whereabouts. This story is about someone that is missing to those that know her. But is she really missing? There is also a twist that makes this disappearance a mystery within a mystery. Let's talk about Darla Lee Miller. I want to say that I was first made aware of this case when I was contacted by Darla's half-brother Curtis a few years ago via email through my blog asking me to give some attention to her case. He didn't grow up with or have a close relationship with Darla, as they had only been around each other a few times, but he is still heartbroken at her disappearance and wants answers for his family. There is very little info about this case online and nothing in any old newspapers, so nearly all of my information came from Darla's sister Laura, so I thank her for taking the time to talk with me about this ongoing painful chapter in her life. I had initially decided to write this article and simultaneously do a podcast for it as a sort of a bonus on the 6th anniversary of my blog. As I was doing my usual research, something happened that I had never experienced before. Little did I know that I would become a small part of this story as well. Darla Lee Hall was born on November 13, 1962, to Darwin and Ruth Hall. She grew up with her parents and older sister Laura in Westland, Michigan. It was a seemingly normal and happy childhood. I will recount a cute memory that Darla's sister Laura told me about her parents that she wanted me to include in hopes that maybe it would jog some people's memory about her family. Her parents were pink freaks. They had everything pink. Pink cars, pink furniture, a pink garage door. Her father, Darwin Hall, actually raced cars for a while. A pink race car, of course, and actually had the nickname Pinky. Darla was on the shy side through school, but had a small, close circle of friends. She would meet Patrick Miller when they were children, as both of their parents would camp at the Greenwood Acres Family Campground in Jackson, Michigan. In 1978, when Darla was 17, she and Pat decided to get married. In fact, Darla and her sister Laura would even get married on the exact same day and had a joint wedding reception. 7 months later, Pat and Darla would welcome a son named Jeremiah. The couple were devoted to their son and their young family and tried their best to make it work. However, the couple would eventually divorce after 10 years of marriage. The divorce was difficult for Darla, so she made the decision to move back in with her parents to get back on her feet. They were helping her and giving her a place to stay, and she would help to take care of things around the house. Jeremiah would live with his father after the divorce, but would spend nearly every weekend at Darwin and Ruth's house so he could spend time with his mother, as well as his grandparents, whom he was very close to. Darla enjoyed seeing her son as well as doing arts and crafts with him. The family was shattered in 1990 when the siblings' father, Darwin Hall, suddenly passed away at age 51 of an apparent heart attack. According to her family, Darla took the death of her father very hard. She became more reclusive, her family members say, but continued to live with and help take care of her mother, who later battled lung cancer. But sadly, Ruth Hall would die from the disease in 1995. Darla's life would take quite a dramatic turn when her mother passed away. Aside from the 10 years she was married, she had spent nearly all of her life living with her parents while they supported her. The family home would soon be sold as her mother's affairs were attended to, so Darla was able to get a portion of the proceeds. It was several $1,000s, enough to give her a good start at a new life. Laura had said that Darla initially put a large portion of the money in an IRA, but then changed her mind and took it right out. It appears she spent the majority of her inheritance living at a motel on Ford Road in Westland, Michigan. As far as the family can ascertain, Once the money ran out, Darla would basically have a transient lifestyle and stay with various people. I did speak to Darla's only child, Jeremiah, in my research of this disappearance. He talked with me candidly about his mother, which I appreciate because I know this isn't an easy subject for him. He was honest in saying that he didn't really feel a strong maternal love coming from his mother, but she did engage with him in her own way, so they did have their own type of mother-son relationship. His recollection was that around the beginning of 1996, his mother went unaccounted for, and he even went so far as to report her missing. I believe that she did turn up shortly after, and Jeremiah said his mother was very upset with him when she found out he had reported her missing. She went on to tell him that she had disowned him and to never report her missing again. Darla's sister Laura remembers last talking to Darla around the same time, the beginning of 1996, and believes the last time she saw her sister was when she was distributing the inheritance checks from their mother's estate. Jeremiah last had a tense phone conversation with his mother in early June of 1996. As to what happened to Darla Lee Miller after that, well, that's really anyone's guess. Darla had never really stayed in close contact with her family. While living with her parents and being married, though, obviously, the family would always know how to get in touch with her and where she was. However, all of that changed when Darla's mother died and her house was sold. As I stated, it is believed that she did live at a local motel until her money ran out, and then it became harder for the family to keep track of Darla. It also seems that staying in touch with her family wasn't high on her list of priorities. We all know of or have heard of people like that. They go missing for years, but the family doesn't really know they are missing because they just assume they don't want to be found or in contact because of past behavior. So how do you know when to suspect that your loved one may actually be missing or that they just don't want to be found? A few years would go on and the family heard nothing from Darla. Considering Jeremiah's last conversation with his mother was not pleasant and she had ordered him to never report her missing again, he just thought that she didn't want to be found. Darla's sister would start searching as well as she could for her sister around 1999. She told me that it really started when her family got a computer and she would Google her sister's name, and as she got more proficient and more things were available on it, she would search more. There was the thought, of course, that her sister just didn't want to be found. But there was a nagging at Laura. Where was her sister? She didn't think she would go this long and not reach out to anyone in her family, especially her son. She just couldn't leave it alone. I think we can all relate to that feeling. You don't just give up on a loved one. If Laura had known for sure that Darla was well and just living off the grid by choice, she would have left it alone. But what if it wasn't that? What if her sister was truly missing, or even worse, had been a victim of foul play? She needed to know where was her sister. After years of doing her own searching and not really finding anything noteworthy about her sister, Laura was traveling near Westland, Michigan in June of 2019, and she made a stop. She went into the Westland, Michigan Police Department and officially reported her sister missing 23 years after the family last had contact with her. She had all of her sister's relevant information, as in her birth date, social security number, and her driver's license number. The police fed all the information into their database. They found something surprising on there that was noteworthy, something that no one had really expected. With this new information, the police would tell her, had Darla Lee Miller now been found? When the police typed in Darla's information, they found a very interesting match, sort of. There was a Darla K. Miller listed. She had the exact same month and day of birth, and the year of birth was 1 year off. This person had, of course, the same first and last name, only the middle name was different. The question is, are the two people the same? She also learned that Darla K. Miller died in a Detroit hospital on January 5th of 2009. Detroit is only 30 miles from Westland. I will say it is unclear the exact details of the length and reason for the hospital stay and the cause of death. The authorities did give Laura the information of the funeral home who handled Darla K. Miller's remains. She contacted them and they were able to tell her that this person was cremated and buried in Detroit. So this leaves a big question for Darla Lee Miller's family. Has their loved one now been located? I had next planned on stating my reasons why this may or may not be the missing Darla. I had it all ready to go and was definitely leaning in the direction of it being a match. However, after some research, I was able to get the answer to the question if the two Darla Millers were the same. After making a few phone calls and help from someone with access to the information I needed, I was able to view the death certificate of the Darla K. Miller who passed away in 2009. Death certificates are a matter of public record in Michigan. I had Darla Lee Miller's social security number, and when I compared the two, it was not a match with Darla K. Miller's social security number. So this possible lead turned out to not be their missing sister. But there is another chance that this mystery may soon be solved. I had decided to look up unidentified persons in Michigan. I came across an unidentified female whose skeletal remains were found in an abandoned house in Detroit in 2005. There was a composite sketch of the unknown victim, and I will say it looks very similar to photos that Laura had sent to me of Darla. I have just now reported this finding to the Doe Network, and I'm waiting to hear back on their opinion if this is indeed a match. I will definitely keep everyone updated on the outcome. As I spoke with the siblings for this article and podcast, I was so touched by hearing the efforts of Darla's sister Laura and also her half-brother Curtis to find their sister. Laura for not giving up on her and doing everything she knows to do for many years now to try and get some answers. Curtis for not really even knowing his sister well and actually only finding out she was missing a few years ago, but willing to do whatever he can to try to get some peace for his family. He can't help but think of the father that he and Darla shared and how he feels he would want Laura and himself to search for answers as to what really happened to their sister. Since Darla Lee Miller turned out not to be the woman who died in a Detroit hospital in 2009, could she still be out there? Of course, there is a possibility, as she would only be 61. Could the unidentified remains found in Detroit in 2005 be Darla? Even though Darla wasn't close with her family, there was a love there and good memories, so it's hard to think that she would leave and never want to resurface again. Never come back or call and check on her only child? Although Jeremiah is understandably upset at the disappearance of his mother and is still trying to process all the trauma it has left him to deal with, I'm sure he would still love to see his mother again, to know that she is still alive, to tell her that she is now a grandmother. Of course, if this unidentified female I discovered online does happen to be their sister, it will be a bittersweet discovery. They will have some sort of peace, perhaps even closure, as in knowing where their loved one is now, but painful in that this female died a tragic, perhaps even violent death at a young age, and from the circumstances it appears that, if it is Darla, she had continued to live a transient lifestyle for many years after she disappeared. If it isn't a match, then it almost deepens this mystery. If Darla isn't the second Darla that died in a Detroit hospital, and she isn't the unidentified female found in Detroit in 2005, where is their sister? There is, of course, the hope that she is still alive out there. That would be a big reason for me writing this article and recording this podcast, for more people to know about this case and to help look for Darla. So now it is a waiting game to see if Darla Lee Miller has now been found. I remember when I first heard about this case, I searched the name online. There were only a few places it was listed, and the circumstances of her disappearance were only one sentence. That is because so much is unknown about this disappearance. In many other cases, there are various clues and theories that we can investigate. In this case, it is more like 1 minute she was there, the next minute she was gone. Perhaps Darla wanted it that way, but regardless, her family that loved her still deserves to have answers and know what happened. I'm sure the not knowing has been the hardest part to bear. Perhaps we can one day piece together this puzzle, or maybe even be surprised and have Darla resurface alive and well. Surely a teenage son who was left without a mother deserves the answers most of all. Until then, I'm sure Laura and Curtis will do everything they can to find answers and hopefully have a resolution one day to their sibling search. That concludes the podcast on Darla Lee Miller. I will be sure and update everyone on the possible match submitted to the Doe Network. If you enjoyed hearing this, please leave me a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. It is one word, Lost and Found Podcast. I post a new podcast every other Sunday, and as always, you can read all of my articles and links to my latest podcasts on my website at Lost and Found Blogs. And you can contact me via email at lostandfoundpodcast@yahoo. And remember that cold cases stay cold because their story stops getting told.